Here's a quick rundown of what Bloom's taxonomy is. This will help you guide your thinking when unpacking your standards, planning objectives, or learning targets, and figuring out how to differentiate instruction. Bloom's taxonomy is a framework that helps teachers categorize educational objectives and increase the rigor of their questioning. Used as an evaluative tool for course objectives and assessments to make sure teachers are challenging students above the level of mere factual recall. The categories and levels operate in increasing degrees of difficulties. The first must be mastered before the next can occur. All 6 levels of Bloom thinking should be utilized by students once mastery has occurred. Bloom's is split into 6 domains, and as you go up, the processes of thinking can get more specific and more challenging for students. Bloom's can be used as a spectrum of lower order thinking and higher order thinking, with remembering being on lower order and creating on the higher. Why do we need Bloom's? The words such as analyze and understand or determine the meaning of words and phrases need to be broken down into small daily or weekly objectives.
Bloom's was created by a group of psychologists in 1956. A man named Benjamin Bloom was the head of this creation. This is a mechanism for categorizing the different levels of learning. Bloom's enables teachers to organize their essential questions into scaffolded categories with the goals of increasing rigor in small, manageable steps. In some exercises, it's easy to focus on the lower level of Bloom's and ask your students questions that only ask them to recall facts. However, to ensure that your students retain the information on the subject, it's important that you challenge them by using the other domains of Bloom's. Bloom's taxonomy stresses the need for teachers to encourage higher level thinking. When students do this, information is retained longer and the key facts are not forgotten.
Objectives aligned with the remembering domain are written to determine if a student can simply recall the information they have learned. Aligning your objectives with the remembering domain utilizes the most basic form of questioning to test your students' knowledge. On the remember level, students are asked questions that begin with list, recognize, label, define, and describe. In this domain, you are testing a child's ability to provide factual information. Some examples of objectives in this domain are describe the water cycle, identify steps in the scientific method, and label the parts of an atom.
The understanding domain asks students to take their recall of information to the next level, to prove their understanding by connecting learned facts to construct meaning. What the teacher should be looking for is a child's ability to explain or demonstrate their understanding of the concepts using their own words or actions. In this level of Bloom's, students are asked questions that ask them to interpret, classify, and infer. Objectives in this domain could be to explain the effects of World War II, summarize the causes of the American Revolution, and predict the results of an experiment. The application domain is where students are asked to use their knowledge acquired to solve problems. When students are asked questions that have them apply their knowledge, the questions will start with use, execute, apply, and show. In this stage, teachers are trying to determine if students can carry out a procedure by using the knowledge they have already acquired about a subject. Objectives in this domain could be illustrate the climax of the story, show the process of addition, and predict the outcome of the scenario.
The analysis level will ask students to deconstruct information into smaller pieces, allowing them to make inferences about the information they are learning. As a teacher, you are testing a student's ability to determine how parts come together to make a whole. Analytical questions begin with words such as analyze, examine, or categorize. This domain would be good for a science lesson. Objective in this domain could look something like make a diagram for the cycle of erosion, analyze facts and opinions, and categorize between different species.
Evaluation tests the student's ability to justify a decision. Questions in this domain will begin with words like test, judge, and reflect. The domain really gives the teacher an idea of whether his or her student can critique something based on their prior knowledge. Some examples of objectives in this domain could be test your hypothesis on whether the plant will grow, reflect on your results of your experiment, and support your statement with evidence.
Next, we have synthesis. The synthesis domain asks students to combine information in a new way to propose new solutions or to create a new product or point of view. Questions in this domain begin with words like create, design, and invent. Objectives in this domain look like design a portrait with evidence of the main character of a story, create a circuit, and invent a new machine.
I hope this video taught you a little bit about Bloom's taxonomy and how teachers can use it in their classroom while applying it to standards and assessment questions. Now let's look at 2 questions that you can reflect on for your own classroom.
How could you use Bloom's taxonomy in your own daily lessons as well as your assessments? Why is it important to incorporate the different levels of Bloom's when questioning your students?